So, Harrison is Khan. Naturally, Benedict Cumberbatch looks nothing like Ricardo Montalban, a fact that drew a lot of criticism since whitewashing is quite common in Hollywood. But there is a reason for this, we're told. It was because the writers felt it was wrong to make a person of color the bad guy. Well, you can enjoy the implications of that. File it under either only white guys can be villains or the peak of physical and mental specimens could never go to someone with dark skin. But what I find really absurd about the whole thing is they made a 6-issue comic to talk about why Khan looks this way. Much like how with the last film, you shouldn't need supplementary material to actually make a decent villain. You shouldn't need supplementary material to explain your casting choice either. I thought about it for 10 seconds and decided the simplest explanation that could have covered this is Khan has taken the place of a real guy named Harrison, even to being altered to look like him. Boy, was I surprised to learn that this simple idea was basically what they did in the comic, and they filled out 6 issues with it. That's a line that can be said in literally less time than Kirk spends ogling Carol Marcus before he finally turns away. Nope. Off to the comic. You're too much material for us. Then again, I found a 7-second deleted scene of Benedict Cumberbatch in the shower, so I guess maybe they were just that tight and had to save all the good stuff. Lucky us. It is a pity, though. This would have allowed for all manner of possibilities, as you could have one of the main characters having been friends with Harrison at the Academy and being unable to fathom his sudden, inexplicable behavior, because of course he's been replaced by Khan. After all, they were so committed to the surprise of this reveal, it's kind of obvious that enhancing the mystery around him would work, yes? I mean, I know the script is nothing more than a flimsy justification to get to the next action scene, but would it really have hurt to have these things have meaning? You know, it's been brought to my attention that one of the writers is a 9/11 truther, and I haven't commented on that, and I'm not going to. Why? Because I don't care if you believe in something stupid. I care to see a movie that is more interested in plot, character, and suspense than in its lens flares. I can point and say, this is probably because of the writer's mistaken beliefs about 9/11, but it's hard when most of the time I'm saying, this is probably because of the writer's mistaken belief about character, plot, theme, logic, etc. It's like they've got 2 themes going on. To give one example, one is a conspiracy-filled anti-government paranoia piece, and the other is about revenge. And then it proceeds to then fumble them all over the place until their themes become self-contradicting. I'll get into it more in the end, but I suppose it's unsurprising. I mean, face it, Transformers 2 didn't make $800 million because people were so impressed with the script. Roberto Orci famously responded to people who pointed out problems like these with Into Darkness by publicly losing his shit. One small sample, quote, I think the article above is akin to a child acting out against his parents. Makes it tough for some to listen, but since I am a loving parent, I read these comments without anger or resentment, no matter how misguided. Having said that, 2 biggest Star Treks in a row with best reviews is hardly a description of broken. And frankly, your tone and attitude make it hard for me to listen to what might otherwise be decent notions to pursue in the future. As I love to say, there is a reason why I get to write the movies and you don't. I'm suddenly understanding why Kirk is written to be an arrogant prick who feels he doesn't need to earn anything and blames other people for his failings. Apparently for Orci, this was an autobiography. So yeah, I think if you're dealing with that, someone who calls those who don't love his film morons, and publicly told someone they were a, quote, shitty fan, we have to get fairly far down the list before nutty conspiracy theorist starts to become the most important character flaw in the making of the movie. But back to the movie. Khan explains that Marcus unfroze him alone to help prepare the Federation for that inevitable war with the Klingons. His brilliance and experience as a warrior, coupled with the technology of the Federation, would create a war machine. Sending Kirk here wasn't a sign of Marcus's faith in him, except his faith that Kirk would fuck everything up. That the impulsive, pig-headed, arrogant, is this my good side? Just kidding, every side of me is good, captain would have no problem dropping a torpedo on the Klingon homeworld, even if his ship was sabotaged. And when the Klingons found the crippled Enterprise, it would finally allow the war to begin, with Starfleet poised thanks to his weapons. As for Khan, Marcus kept his people frozen in order to control him, So Khan put them in the torpedoes in the hopes of smuggling them out. Because, it would be so easy for him to just walk out with a torpedo under his coat. Well, he was discovered, and he believed that they had all been killed, and so did what he did to Marcus out of revenge. Meanwhile, Scotty is headed to those coordinates and finds a massive artificial structure. No mere station, it's a ginormous manufacturing center for super starships. And sure enough, the one being built is headed right to the Enterprise. Kirk and Marcus verbally mix it up until Kirk says that he knows about Khan and his crew. But Marcus says they're too dangerous. The damage Khan alone managed was proof enough of that. So Kirk pulls the "give me a second to put it in a box first" trick and tries to go to warp instead, even though the ship is still damaged and Chekhov wasn't confident in running this thing when it wasn't broken. And when the super ship shows up and blasts a hole in the side, well, that doesn't make Chekhov's job any easier. They've made it to Earth, for all the good that does them, so Carol insists that Kirk let her speak to her father, knowing that he would never destroy it with her on board. Of course, that's a rather useless position when teleportation exists, so they just beam her off the ship so Marcus can go back to blasting the Enterprise.
Sir, my crew was just following my orders. I take full responsibility for my actions, but they were mine, and they were mine alone.
Well, there's a first time for everything, I guess. Well, the weapons all suddenly power down on Marcus's super ship, some trickster in engineering, and no, it wasn't Carol.
I snuck on and seeing as I've just committed an act of treason against a Starfleet admiral, I'd really like to get off this bloody ship now. Beam me out.
Why couldn't this have been the Simon Pegg show? This movie would have been so much better. I'd put him against Khan any day. Well, unfortunately, today's the day of aligning with Khan. They both want to deal with Marcus, and Kirk has no means to beam a big boarding party over, so it's him and Superman to sort this out. Spock doesn't think much of this plan, though.
The Enterprise and her crew need someone in that chair that knows what he's doing.
A novel idea. What say we try it and see what it's like? So Kirk goes to see Khan and discuss boarding the ship, all while Bones injects Khan's blood into a dead Tribble because what else are you supposed to do with a dead Tribble other than do experiments on it? Anyway, the plan is that Kirk and Khan will be ejected out into space, fly at the other one, and shoot in through an access hatch that Scotty will open at precisely the right time. Only Scotty's interrupted by one of the super ship's personnel, so that's a problem. Also, all the space debris in the way from the fight. But with some quick timing, both problems are taken care of. No hitchhikers. Meanwhile, Spock has made contact with Spock, who says, "Sorry, I can't tell you about the future." And young Spock is like, "Yeah, I know. I was just hoping you might be able to tell me a little something about Khan is all." And at that, the old Spock is tripping over himself to give info. Khan's the guy who killed him, after all, and you have to have a healthy respect for that. So he does everything short of showing young Spock the anti-Khan tramp stamp that he has. Meanwhile, Khan is showing his skill by leading them through a part of the ship where Marcus will know weapons are too dangerous to use, so it'll be hand-to-hand, which is to their advantage. Because Khan is superhuman, Kirk will punch anyone, and Scotty's from Scotland, so nothing more need be said there. Plus, the ship is designed so that it can be run with a minimal crew. If necessary, it could be run even by just one person. So with so few people, the group can chomp through the baddies, get to the bridge, and stun everybody but Carol and Marcus, so Marcus can point out the problem here.
War is coming, and who's gonna lead us? You?
Fucking hope not. Well, Kirk isn't listening to this. Not that it matters, because Khan has a few things he wants to say. Scotty has stunned him on Kirk's order, but being superhuman just means that he took a quick power nap. Now he's up and he's peeved. First, he beats the shit out of Kirk. Not so much fun when the other guy can fight back, huh? Then he breaks Carol's leg so she can't interfere, and then treats Marcus like the pimple he is on the butt of humanity. And pops him. So, Khan calls up the Enterprise.
I'm going to make this very simple for you.
Captain,
Your crew, for my crew.
you betrayed us.
Well, I'd say that Kirk did that first. Shooting Khan in the back, that kind of is pretty much a betrayal, isn't it? Khan offers an exchange. His crew for the 3 hostages. But Spock is concerned that Khan will then begin eradicating any that he feels are inferior. An out-of-nowhere change to Khan's goals, but then I suppose wants to take over the galaxy might be too complex of a motive for a film operating at this level of sophistication. So Khan insists, give him what he wants, or he'll kill every person on the Enterprise. So Spock makes the exchange. The torpedoes go over, the trio gets sent back, and then Khan starts shooting at them. But what he doesn't know is that Spock rigged the torpedoes to explode, causing serious damage and pissing Khan off to no end, thinking they just slaughtered the whole of Khan's people. But Bones assures him not to worry, they already took all the pods off the torpedoes, so they didn't kill anybody doing that. Again, not that Khan knows, and as you might have learned, he's got some wrath to him. Well, more problems. The engines are shutting down, and the ship is falling out of the sky. I'm not sure they're grateful that you signed them up for this particular mission, Kirk. So they head to engineering, where gravity antics continue. Chekhov is sent off to activate one thingamabob, while Kirk and Scotty go for the doohickey. But the core is misaligned, and it's lethal in there. So Kirk decides to persuade Scotty, but you saw that coming. So, accompanied by a string orchestra, Kirk heads into the core, and then proceeds to fix it through more persuasion. Yes, beating it until it does what he wants. An apt metaphor for Kirk's captainship. With that, though, they're able to restart the engines and avoid smashing into the Earth, but Scotty calls up with the bad news about Kirk. So Spock runs down and sees Kirk die in a reversal of the Wrath of Khan death scene. As I've said over the course of this show several times, the difference between an homage and a ripoff is whether or not you add something of value to it. So I can't tell you how gratifying I found it when last month Nicholas Meyer actually commented on this very scene and said, quote, "In my sort of artistic worldview, if you're going to do an homage, you have to add something. You have to put another layer on it." And they didn't. So what is it that they did add? We are so better off with that, aren't we? Oh yeah, what are we supposed to do in this situation? We have both Orsi and his critic Meyer both get to write movies. What do we do then? I suppose it's a wash. I mean, you're comparing someone who wrote a piece that actually convinced the sitting president to change his national policy against someone who once made a one-season show about a soccer player who's also a secret agent. That's basically the same thing. Well, Khan has decided to smash his ship into Starfleet headquarters as one final fuck you, and rather unexpectedly, the good guys don't prevent him from smashing up the place. Also unexpectedly, he survives. No, scratch that. Also, ridiculously, he survives and escapes into the city, but Spock is beamed down. Alone because he's got a great big plate of vengeance to hand over Kirk's death. Oh yeah, and they picked up the body and brought it to sickbay. But that's when a miracle happens. Our beloved character is not dead. Yes, 3 cheers for the Tribble! Hip hip hooray! Oh, this day is starting to look a lot better now. Anyway, Spock continues to chase Khan and getting into a fight on top of a flying car, where even the Vulcan nerve pinch is incapable of putting Khan completely out of the fight. But what Bones learns from that Tribble is that Khan's blood has the power to bring the dead back to life. Oh yeah, that's a hell of a retcon, isn't it? I'm going to assume that they drew that blood from his ass, the same place where they got that idea from. So that means that they need Khan alive, because you can't get blood out of a dead body. I mean, that's just stupid. So Uhura arrives and hits Khan with some stun blast long enough to let Spock back into the fight and turn the tables.
Spock, stop! Stop! He's our only chance to save Kirk!
Who knew that Uhura's primary job this movie would be trying to persuade people to stop beating up Khan? So now they've got Khan and bring Kirk back from the dead with his blood.
Once we caught him, I synthesized the serum from his super blood. Tell me, are you feeling homicidal, power mad, despotic?
No more than usual.
That bad, huh? So Khan is frozen with his people, who are stored away for when we need a small army of supervillains for our own little Suicide Squad. And there's a big speech a year later, when they finally finish restoring the Enterprise, where Kirk does the whole Space the Final Frontier thing, which I won't play because this Kirk has not earned the right to say it. Douchebag.